In this movie we're going to be reviewing the first step for rendering an image in color, and that is prepping the artwork. You have already scanned your image and it needs to be edited to make sure that when we use the paint bucket, when we use the magic wand tool, all the areas will be selected properly. The first thing to do is to clean up the image using levels. So I'm going to open the levels window pressing Command or Control L. I'm going to be moving the sliders to get rid of some of the stains that appear in the background. I don't want to get rid of the clouds. There are some clouds at the back, although I could bring them a bit later. Maybe something like that works good. And hit OK. So the image is a lighter image now. We need to define the areas that are going to be filled with color by creating multiple layers, one for each of the elements. So I'm going to do that, going to the bottom right corner, create new layer, and one for each of the elements that I will see. I will start with the buildings. So I have created layers for the buildings, 3 buildings on the left, 2 buildings on the right. I don't need to worry about making layers for all the elements that appear in the composition, just the main ones. If I want later, I could create some of those layers. It will start getting, the list will start increasing as I start creating layers. So I'm going to hold Shift and select all the layers that I want to create or to place into a group. Right click on them and choose Group from Layers. The group is going to be called Buildings, and I will save. I will place all these elements into this Buildings folder, and I can select them and do the same thing for all the elements that appear in the scene. The light pole, cars, people. We can bring the people later, so we don't need to color them. The sidewalk, the pavement, stairs, this canopy. We also need one for the sky and some vegetation that appears at the back. So I'm gonna speed up the computer just to make this video shorter. Now that all my layers have been created, I need to edit all the elements to make sure that when I apply the bucket tool, the paint bucket tool, it doesn't bleed, it doesn't go outside the image. For example, I'm looking at this building on the right, which probably will be a good idea to have it as 2 separate buildings. That's fine, I'm going to leave it as one. If I apply the bucket tool here, I'm going to place the bucket tool. Let's say I want to color it with red. Make sure that the settings is anti-alias on, contiguous on, and all layers on. All these 3 must be active. Tolerance 32 works well. If I was to paint here, it will fill a lot of the elements in the scene with that red color, not only this section. Why? Because the color has bleed here, it has escaped through here. So I have to close these gaps or these holes. I will do that in my original layer, background layer. Paint, not with the brush tool, but with the pencil tool. Press D to access the default colors. With a very small brush, 1 point works well. And let's trace a few lines on those gaps that we see to make sure that the color doesn't bleed, doesn't interfere with others. Looks like it's all ready to go. Now we can start applying a flat color. The flat color should be applied with just the bucket tool. I'm going to access the bucket tool. The settings are, as I said before, anti-alias, contiguous, and all layers. Let's start by painting the buildings. I don't have any swatches loaded into my computer. I should define a set of swatches that I'm going to be using. It's not a good idea just to grab the swatches listed here. You should get the swatches from a website such as Cooler. To import the swatches from Cooler into your computer, go to the window menu, choose extensions and choose Cooler. These are the list of swatches that we have, and grab a color combination that is appropriate with your composition. Again, don't select the swatches from this list. This is not the best color combination. You'll have better chances of getting harmonious colors and colors that follow certain rules, certain color rules, choosing any swatches from here. So I'm going to be selecting probably the very first one, copy of flat design colors, add to swatches panel, and I have a few swatches inserted. I'm going to use variations of that, so I will stick to that, and maybe another one like this that it has a couple of green tones that I will use for vegetation. Add to swatches panel. So I have inserted into my swatches panel. I can start coloring. I'll color the buildings with this set of colors first. So left building, I have my bucket. The color that I'm going to be using is probably this one. Zoom in and make sure that you're in the appropriate layer, and we start filling the building. I am missing a few elements here. I could fix that later. I could also change the tolerance. Maybe I will undo that and change the tolerance level to 50, and it has covered most of it. If it still didn't work properly, I'll access my pencil tool. I'll pick up a rather larger brush, and I paint the areas that were missed. Notice that as I'm painting, I might delete some of the previous image underneath. Don't worry about it, we'll make it come up later using blending modes. So I have painted the building. Probably the bottom part of the building should also be painted. Like this. Left building 2, let's change pick a different color. Left building 3, maybe this reddish color. Oops, I did a mistake there. I click actually in the black area, that's why it selected everything that is black. So I'll go back and rather in the pencil tool, it has loaded the color that I'm currently using, and with the pencil tool fine-tune these spaces. G to access the bucket tool. Painted an area here again that I didn't mean to paint. Press E to access the eraser tool. It's a very big brush, and I erase those spaces. And I keep painting all the elements until I have finished my composition. Very important here, notice how when I applied the bucket tool it bleeds into the car. I made a mistake and didn't close properly this area. The easiest way to do it when you are already on the go is to access the pencil tool, B to access the pencil tool. With a tiny pencil, even with the same color that I'm working, I'm gonna close. G to access the bucket tool. Now I paint and it doesn't go inside. I really don't have trees at the back. I have a shade of what the trees might look like. I also have some plants here. That's when I'm gonna be painting with green. I need to define an area where the trees will go. I will use my polygonal lasso tool for that. And click to define an outline of roughly where the trees should be placed. I have the basic elements of my composition ready. Now there's some detail that has been lost by using the bucket tool. I will create a copy of my background layer, drag it to the bottom right corner, and that copy is going to be placed in the uppermost position, changing the blending mode from normal to multiply. And I can see what the colors, the original colors, look like.